Hi, I know what you're thinking. Why am I watching a video about Puddle of Mudd playing that shitty Nirvana cover? That happened, in the past. It's not now. Why am I not watching a video about police brutality, or climate change, or people dying of a disease, or the planet running out of resources, or financial instability? Fuck that, we're talking about butt rock. When this Puddle of Mudd video came out, I think like everyone else, I laughed at it. I made fun of the guy's terrible rendition of a Nirvana song worse than any bar karaoke ever was. I laughed at the bassist who looked like in that moment he was weeping for his soul, realizing that God had abandoned him. And just kind of the absurdity of another band covering a Gen X boomer rock anthem as a way to solidify their place in the classic rock and roll canon or whatever. Eventually the video had faded from everyone's mind, and it just became something that everyone had seen. But I often found myself returning to the cringy video, and asking myself a few questions. Why Puddle of Mudd? Why now? And why on SiriusXM of all places? Why is Octane, one of the nation's biggest rock and metal platforms, promoting a band that hasn't really been relevant since the turn of the millennium?
Here's to another lousy millennium.
To be honest, it's not very hard to answer these questions. It's no surprise that rock is a genre that caters to an older audience, and a majority of its fans aren't really looking to experiment with new music, particularly those that are listening to the radio. I kind of think about this a lot because I actually work in the rock radio industry. Fuck, I'm poor. God, I'm 5 minutes from making porn. What would that look like? The part of the country that I work in has a large population, but it's pretty isolated and has a lot of rural surroundings. So in this area, the radio isn't actually as irrelevant as you would think. There are other parts of the country that are similar to the area I work in, so I don't think that rock radio is entirely dead. The radio station that I work for is actually really popular, not just with older people, but with younger listeners as well. For our area, we're pretty influential in exposing people to new bands, and as well as helping bands promote their shows and get them to come to our area.
Oh, this is a shithole.
I've met many bands, and I've seen firsthand just how effective getting on our platform can be for someone's show. You'd be blown away by some of the bands that have been outperformed by smaller bands just because they got on our platform and got the right exposure. And that kind of comes back to the whole Puddle of Mudd thing. You can take a band that hasn't really been musically relevant in 2 decades and compare them to a band that has. You can take a band like the Deftones that's been critically and commercially successful for over 2 decades and compare them to Puddle of Mudd, and you get some shocking results. Right now, the Deftones have over 2 million Spotify listeners, and Puddle of Mudd also has 2 million Spotify listeners. Actually, closer to 3 million. That sucks. At the end of the day, it's really easy just to not give a shit about any of this. Just to see this as what it is, the spectacle of a dying genre. But I really wish it wasn't the case. I'm making this video because I really do care about the health of rock. Because it doesn't only affect rock, it also affects things like metal and hardcore. A rising tide lifts all sails. If people get into rock, they are more likely to get into harder music down the line.
Who taught you how to do this stuff?
You, alright? I learned it by watching you.
Last year I saw all these articles saying that 2019 was an amazing year for rock, and that the genre was like healthier than ever. But was that really true? What, because Korn, Slipknot, and Tool put out albums? Bands that had breakthrough success more than 20 years ago? In all honesty, the health of the genre is really shitty. If the continued success of the genre is based upon prior success, what does that say about rock in 10 or 20 years? For Rock on the Range 2035, we're going to roll out Corey Taylor and ask him to perform, literally turning him into the dick-flattening meme.
Are you fucking ready? Shut up.
So how does all of this relate back to my main thesis of this video? Did Puddle of Mudd really break rock? The answer to that question is... kinda? Not really. Congratulations, you've bought into another clickbait title.
God damn it! Hate this hacker crap.
To truly understand why Puddle of Mudd has been so influential on rock, you have to go to the last vestige of rock's popularity, the early 2000s.
These young people are all winners.
Coming off the back of nu metal, post-grunge took the world by storm. taking the aggression of nu metal, mixed in with a sensibility songwriting of grunge. Post-grunge created a highly accessible genre that bands like Stained, Nickelback, and Puddle of Mudd thrived in. At the same time, bands like The Offspring and Blink-182 had set the stage for a new generation of youth-centric rock to explode in the early 2000s. The schism in rock resulted from the divide of these two genres. Whether popular rock would follow in the footsteps of grunge and metal, or would go in a different direction, favoring emo and pop punk. I swear to God, something about turning 40 just turns you into an absolute asshole. Just mentioning My Chemical Romance or Panic at the Disco causes these assholes to go into just fucking freak out mode. Calling everything that isn't Pantera gay and retarded isn't a personality.
We lose fucking legends that have more fucking talent in their fucking goddamn pubic hair than you motherfuckers on your best fucking day, even if you fucking bought it.
Also having no perspective for the way they were perceived 20 years ago when their music was also called shit. Time is a flat fucking circle. It's my belief that the schism between pop punk and post-grunge has been one of the biggest influences on rock and why music is the way it is today. This is where its fans decided that rock could be halted as far as progression. From this point forward, rock would rest on its legacy, and bands that were emo and pop punk would cater to the younger generation, but would be overall disconnected from the legacy of hard rock. But I would be lying if I said there wasn't overlap between these two sides of the schism. There were bands like 3 Days Grace and Breaking Benjamin that found success by straddling the edge between legacy rock and the angsty sound of the mid-2000s. And there were older legacy bands like Green Day that were able to dip into the music scene of the youth with American Idiot. But for a majority of bands from that era, they were never really accepted by the mainstream as legacy rock. And that includes mega successful bands like Fall Out Boy and My Chemical Romance, who saw a lot more attention from the pop world than they ever did from the mainstream rock or metal. Puddle of Mudd represents the last major subgenre of music that was accepted into the fold of legacy rock. There's a line in the song 1985 by Bowling for Soup that I always think of. When did Motley Crue become classic rock? And that is a true phenomenon when a band is recognized for its contribution to the music scene and eventually accepted into the legacy rock canon. But that hasn't really been true for many of the pop punk and emo bands of that era, who have been extremely influential for similar bands today.
What is it?
I'm not sure. I feel a disturbance.
But I think that's been steadily changing. By working in the radio, I've been given a bird's eye view of what mainstream rock fans are listening to. And over the years, I've been really surprised by some of the bands that pop into our promotions. Bands that were once extremely successful in metalcore and the scene world are suddenly taking a hard turn towards mainstream rock. Bands like Asking Alexandria and Bullet for My Valentine are coming out with music that sounds like Puddle of Mudd songs from 2005. And I think I understand why. These bands saw huge success amongst younger fans only to see their initial fans grow up and start listening to other music. So they tried to cater to an older, more consistent fan base of rock fans by switching their sound to a style that was very shaped by bands like Puddle of Mudd and Breaking Benjamin. And this hasn't been just restricted to former scene bands. Even the nu metal bands of the same era have taken a similar route. Say what you will about bands like Disturbed or Godsmack, when they first began, they had a much harder sound. Nowadays, these bands dominate mainstream rock with pseudo-country boomer rock that's stylistically very similar to post-grunge. I think if I didn't work in the radio, I really wouldn't notice these things, and I'd probably just continue listening to underground music, but these two scenes are related.
Disrespecting my whole family.
So what is to be done about Puddle of Mudd? Probably nothing. They're a band that's in decline simply due to the changing of the times, and this will probably be the last we ever hear about Puddle of Mudd. And these two scenes don't exist in a vacuum. So did Puddle of Mudd single-handedly break rock? No. They were in the right place at the right time, with a bunch of other factors just happening to line up simultaneously. And I think placing all the blame on Puddle of Mudd lets rock fans off the hook too easily. I think just the general shittiness of rock fans being extremely inhospitable to the new generation of music, and by alienating a bunch of their young fans, they had no choice but to regress into previously established genres of music. So in conclusion, it's not their fault. It's not even your fault. It's our fault. Hey, thank you for watching. If you want to support my music, we have our Bandcamp in the description. Please feel free to buy our album and support us in any way you can. Please subscribe and check out our Instagram. Thank you very much. Love you.